You solemnly swear affirm the testimony about the provide is truth, the whole truth, nothing but truth, so help you God.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm speaking with you today at the invitation of the State Attorney's Office in order to give the court some insight into the impact these events have had on my life. And I hope that my statements will aid the court in the sentencing process. In order to fully understand the impact of the defendant's assault on me, it's important, I think, to have some background information regarding my life leading up to the assault. My husband and I are the parents of 10 children. The youngest 4 are siblings who came home.
Did you say, how many kids did you say, ma'am?
Now I wonder if I should admit it. We're parents of 10 children, Your Honor.
Good. Oh my, what a blessing. Okay. Okay, yes, ma'am.
Our youngest 4 children came home to us through adoption from our foster care system, their siblings. And the day following the finalization of our adoption, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And immediately I began radiation and drug therapies in an attempt to slow the tumor progression and treat symptoms. When those interventions failed, I underwent brain surgery at Mayo Clinic to remove as much of the tumor as was safe. My treatment was ongoing at the time of the assault, and I continue to undergo treatment at Mayo to curb the growth of the remaining tumor and to treat symptoms.
Sorry, what did you just say?
I said that my treatment was ongoing at the time of the assault, and I continue to undergo treatment at Mayo
And you said something else after that.
Just to curb the growth of the remaining tumor and
okay.
symptoms.
Yes, ma'am. Continue.
So on the day of the incident, when I chose to intervene after observing 15 minutes of escalating beratement and bullying of the store staff by the defendant, I chose the least possible.
Did you say 15 minutes?
Yes, Your Honor. The incident was already going on when I walked in the door, and it was a full 15 minutes that it went on. Before it escalated to the point where I felt like I needed to up to what was going on.
Well, what did you witness?
When I first came in, I noticed just 2 children unattended, and that had my attention, and there was a bit of an argument at the register, someone trying to make a return, and soon it became apparent that those children belonged to the person who is Ms. Hunter, who was at the register trying to return an item. It was escalating, her frustration was escalating. She was swearing at, threatening, and the store staff was pleasant and trying to placate, but she.
Okay, when you say swearing, what words?
I don't think that I could quote improve, but
you don't know what?
I don't think that I could quote exactly what she was saying to them.
You don't remember the words? You can give the initials if you don't want to.
No, it's not a hesitation to say bad words in public, Your Honor. It's just that what registered in my mind was that here was a woman who was swearing at the store staff in front of her children. So I don't think that I committed her words to memory.
Was she speaking to one person or a group of people that worked at the store?
It was first a clerk and then a manager and then another manager. And she was attempting to return an item that she didn't have in her possession. She just had a picture of the item on her phone to show the store staff. You can see that it's broken. Why? And anyway, it was escalating to the point that when.
Okay, wait, did you say she was attempting to return something, but she didn't have the item, but it was depicted on the phone?
Yes. And she was getting increasingly furious that they could see that it was broken in the picture on the phone. Why couldn't it be returned? And they, at one point, she said if they wanted it back, they needed to come to her house and get it then. And it was very intense, and it was escalating to the point where I didn't feel like I could just leave it be and walk out of the store and shake my head. So when Miss Hunter's child needed to use the restroom and the store staff told her, we don't have one here, but if you go around the corner, we'll try to look this receipt up. And when Miss Hunter shouted that she was going to stand here screaming as loud as she pleased until all the customers left, until they made this right. And she positioned herself at the exit to the cash registers.
Okay, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correct. She said she was going to scream as loud as she could until everyone in the store heard what she was saying.
Well, they had been trying to calm her down, that she was upsetting other customers. And when they invited her to take her son to the restroom and they would continue trying to look up the receipt, then she stated her intention that she would, continue her behavior until she got her way. And so it had escalated to the place where she was blocking the exit, and I felt like I couldn't just not step in. So if that shapes what my reasoning, I've never taken my phone out and intervened or filmed anything or posted anything before, but this wasn't an instance. It was intense enough that I felt like I needed to step in.
Okay, so then what happened, ma'am?
So I knowing seeing something to this customer would only escalate, I chose the least confrontational form of stepping in that I could think of. And so before I raised my camera and began visibly filming, Miss Hunter and I had no interaction whatsoever, not so much as eye contact. 100% of our interaction is captured in that short video evidence, and the video has not been altered or edited or shortened in any way. The defendant's children were not being filmed. They had distanced themselves from her and were toward the front of the store. And as the video indicates, it was only after Miss Hunter turned her aggression to me and walked across the store to carry out her threat that her child wandered over to investigate what was happening. At no time did Miss Hunter ask me to stop filming. And on the contrary, her first statement was an acknowledgement that she knew her behavior to the store staff was being documented. Her second statement was an acknowledgement that the video could be shared. And then, fully cognizant of these facts, Ms. Hunter still chose to escalate further in her aggression.
How did she convey? Do you remember the words she used to indicate that she knew she was being videoed and that she?
Yes, I believe
that the possibility was going to be shared.
Yes, so the video captures, I held my phone up, she looked over to me, and that was the first time she noticed me and the first time we interacted, and she said, "What, you really need this?" Indicating she saw that she was being documented. And then she said, what do you need me to post it for you? Indicating that she understood that this could be shared. And so, cognizant of those facts, she still chose to escalate. I feel like she had adequate time to consider her actions. She had several seconds more to reconsider her chosen course as she crossed the store to me, and still she gave herself permission to behave in this manner.
So what was the distance from that you were standing to her before she walked over to you?
She had positioned herself at the exit to the cash registers, and I was across the store, just at the end of an aisle. I would be hard pressed to put a number on the number of feet.
How many steps? I mean,
7 steps, 10 steps. I'm not sure.
So she had to walk over to you?
She had to take several steps over. So this was not me in her face or at an arm's distance. This was, there was some travel time between her and me wherein she could reconsider her course.
Okay, so what happened when she reached you?
Before she reached me, she little flustered going back into that moment, Your Honor, was
okay. Understandable.
She So she, you know, indicated, what do you want me to post it for you? And then she said, I think I'll get real close to you and cough in your face then. How's that? How about that? She took the time.
She said those words?
Yes, Your Honor. She
Okay.
took the time to give offensive hand gestures. I think the kids call it flipping me off, or the double bird.
Okay, excuse me, with the double bird?
Yes, the double flip off hand signal. I don't know what the kiddos are calling it these days. But so she took the time to do that, and then to say, I think I'll get real close and cough on your face then. How's that? And then she walked over to me, got close enough in my face directly in my face and coughed. And I feel like the time that she had to consider what her course of action was, when she saw that she didn't like being held accountable for her treatment of store staff, I feel like that was not the knee-jerk reaction of an overprotective mama bear. It was an episode that was rooted in privilege and entitlement, and it was targeted to exploit and attack vulnerability with an assumption of an immunity to consequences. As the court will no doubt recall, at the early point in the pandemic when this incident occurred here in our area, masking was not mandatory and it was not universal. Only those of us considered at risk were wearing masks in public. The day of the assault, I was one of very few wearing a mask, not only to guard my own compromised immune system, but to guard against the risk of transmitting COVID to my youngest children. Their early experiences of severe neglect and abuse had left them with a diagnosis of failure to thrive when they first came home to us, and therefore a weaker immune system moving forward. It was a time of universal fear and uncertainty, and I was doing my best to protect myself and my family. Upon seeing my mask as an indication of vulnerability at that time and choosing this particular mode of attack, the defendant's act of coughing in my face at the height of a pandemic was an act that was calculated to attack me at my weakest point, both physically and psychologically. I was stunned in the moment and increasingly fearful in the aftermath. The intention of the defendant's actions could only have been to transmit sickness or to leave me fearful that I had been infected. I worried for the health and safety of my family and wondered how in the world I could possibly isolate to protect them in a household of 12 if I had been intentionally infected. I scrambled to find COVID testing that was not readily accessible at that time, and ultimately I paid out of pocket to be tested. The results of the COVID test were negative, but the impact of this incident didn't end with a negative COVID test. I felt strongly at the time, and I continue to feel.
Let me ask you a question. So when she coughed, did you feel anything coming from her mouth other than maybe breath? Did you feel any, I know this is gross, that's not a legal term, but did you feel any saliva or anything?
It was a forceful enough cough that her spittle landed on me.
It did. Okay.
So blinked and recoiled. And so I had a mask covering my nose and mouth, but not my eyes. Yes. So I felt strongly at the time, and I continue to feel strongly today that there should be some accountability for the actions of the defendant. So this is why I chose to report the assault. And so as the criminal case has progressed, each time I've been called upon to interact with the process, I again experienced that anxiety and anger and other emotions associated with the events. In the end, Your Honor, I am not seeking any specific consequence. I would simply ask that the machinery of justice work as it's intended to, and that the defendant be held accountable according to the dictates of the law. The exact measure of accountability that would be appropriate in this case, I leave to the wisdom of the court, and your decision today will bring closure for me and my family in this matter. So I thank you for allowing me time to speak today, Your Honor. Thank you.
Just my understanding, independent of COVID, in light of your condition, your treatment with your tumor, uh, you're required to be very careful um, about where you go, what you do, because not only COVID, but just general, um, any kind of germ, any kind of infection could be problematic for you, to put it mildly. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. As is the case with a lot of diagnoses, the cure is worse than the disease, and leaves me with a weakened immune system. So, especially as the pandemic was hitting, our family completely locked down. My husband did all of the shopping. I just didn't ever go out. And this was a rare exception. And I only happened to have gone into the store that day because the air conditioning in our vehicle was out and I had half an hour to wait for an appointment. So I was just seeking a safe place to be for half an hour until an appointment time. And so.
Do you recall whether the employees, any of the employees at the store at Pier 1 were had donned a mask, were wearing a mask?
I do not believe they were. No, Your Honor. Masking really was pretty rare. I don't recall seeing anyone else in the store that day with a mask. So
Okay.
it has been my assumption that seeing the mask as an indication of vulnerability was what made such a random form of attack come to mind for the defendant.
Did you at any time, I want to make sure we're clear on this.
Yes, Your Honor.
Were you notified at any time that the accused or the defendant, Mrs. Hunter, had been tested, taken the COVID test, and it came back negative? Did anyone convey that to you? You shook your head when I asked a question. Was it ever conveyed to you? I want to make sure for the record. Were you ever informed?
I do not recall being informed of that, but it was a very stressful time. And I could be mistaken if it's in the state attorney's office files that I was informed, then I was, but I do not recall being informed. What I recall is weeks of worrying about every little tickle in the throat. Is that a COVID symptom? Is that, you know.
How many days from this episode were you able to ultimately get tested?
It took some time researching to figure out what is the incubation time. If I had been infected, when would I need to test to see if I was positive? And then several more days to figure out where I could be tested, waiting in lines that then got shut down until I finally found a place that I could just pay a high fee to be tested. And so I believe it was 5 days later. And then I continued to monitor for symptoms for another 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks with no symptoms, the worry started to dissipate. So.
When was your most recent surgery or treatment at Mayo just prior to this episode?
So I was, let me do the math in my head. I was about 10 months out of recovering from brain surgery, Your Honor. And then
10 how many? 10 what?
10 months. I had
Okay.
had brain surgery 10 months prior, and was recovering function and cognition. Brain scans every 3 months, which we still continue.
After the surgery, you were convalescent, obviously. So how long after surgery before you were even permitted to go out in public? Other than to go to the doctor, of course.
This was enough prior to the pandemic that that my restriction out in public was more due with my ability to move and
Okay, I understand you had a compromised immune system based on what you said. So that's what I was speaking of. Okay, so now regarding the COVID test, you say ultimately, did you have any out-of-pocket expenses as relates to the testing or anything that
yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Yes, the cost of the COVID test was $150 out of pocket to me.
Okay. And that was did you have any other than we can't put a price tag on your anxiety, of course, and the inconvenience, but any other monetary losses?
Not at all. No, sir.
Okay. Mr. Carson, you have any questions?
No, Your Honor.